XDC XRP XCN and the Clarity Act. Why January 15th delay changes everything. This is NC Hammer Crypto. My name's Neil, keeping technical analysis short and sweet. And this is for the subscribers food shorts. This is your request. You and anyone else feel free to become a member. 50% of everything I make will go to help save animals' lives. And the member also gets member videos on some pretty good ROI coins before they take off. And some of you actually got gifted memberships. Not sure if you guys are aware. Definitely check it out. But you're able to check out all the previous member videos for 1 month, and they are still accurate and informative. And then lastly, the live contest will be either tomorrow or Wednesday from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. Somewhere in there, write in the comments below if you prefer one day over the other, and let's get into it. So XDC, I haven't brought this one up for quite a while. It's not looking the best. There's nothing really to be looking at, but due to your request, I mean, definitely do your own research. This is just whatever I typed in to Gemini and whatever it decided to produce from what I have looked up in the past. But I started recently using Gemini over ChatGPT, kind of did a comparison on XDC, XRP, and XCN, and always take this with a bucket of salt because I could be stating one information that is completely incorrect. It could just be news that the AI is picking up out of nowhere. But we see XDC is Global Trade and Finance, RWAs, real world assets, if you don't know what RWA is. And that's extremely important because they're going to be tokenizing almost everything in the market, like XRP is going to be able to be purchasing houses, and it's on the blockchain, and everything is set out and the government can be tracking it. That's essentially why they want to introduce XRP as the new financial system, in my opinion. And XCN will be playing a part in it. And the main concern is that if XCN does not follow the Clarity Act, then they are going to have to adjust some stuff and start focusing more to be compliant. XRP beat the SEC in lawsuits, and the Clarity Act is essentially trying to say the SEC can't take them to court again because they've done it for 7 years, trying to figure out a way they can get their hands on this commodity, as it is not a security. I talked about the difference between commodities and securities in my previous video, but definitely I don't really like doing news because the information could be, a curveball. It could be nothing related to anything, but we're just going to kind of go over XRP, battle the SEC. Coinbase is fighting the whole Clarity Act because they want to give a higher yield to the people who are staking and holding their cryptocurrencies, but the government wants to only give you a small percentage of what can actually be produced by holding that currency. If you know the difference between online banking and just leaving the money in your bank, the bank will give you about 0.005% APY a month. But if you do online banking, it could be anywhere from 3.5 to 5% APY. So if you're just leaving your money in your bank, it's doing absolutely nothing. You're actually losing money because the dollar is devaluing, but XRP will increase in value because it burns itself. If you don't know anything about the burning methodology, do your own research. I'm not going to get into it. But the main thing is Goliath Mainnet here in 2026 is focusing on AI agents. And if something happens, it's going to have to pivot its entire 2026 roadmap to stay compliant. So that's the main thing to be looking at, but I'm not really worried about it. Let's actually start digging into the TA because the news is more or less irrelevant. Let's actually do XCN because some people just skip forward to try and see the XCN chart in my channel. Definitely check out the other videos if you've missed it because there's a lot of good information. But starting with XCN, we'll move into XRP and XDC because you guys will start to fall off like flies according to analytics. But more or less, let's remove everything. This is what we have. You guys see I have a new indicator in here. I've used it before, but it's more or less, I want to say irrelevant, because you can see that in previous history, for example, like here, We have these green lines on top, which is typically, if it pushes up to the green line, it's going to get some resistance and pull back towards the center. If it pushes to the red, it's going to get pulled back and pulled towards the center. You don't see these curves until the movement has already happened. You see it going in between right at the 50 on the red and green channel, and then out of nowhere, a little bit of volume shot this thing up, I'm sure over 160%. If we look at it, it is more or less 457%. There's nothing telling you that this is going to stop with these red and green lines, which makes it more or less irrelevant, but it touches this green line, pulls right back through the red line, does some consolidation, and the lines aren't going to look like this. They only look like this because it kept shooting upwards. So there's not a whole bunch of information. Like example here, pushing downwards, you don't see the green turning to the upside at all. You just see it trickling down, forming a channel, and then out of nowhere, a little bit of volume, push this thing up well beyond the green dotted range. So this indicator is called the, what is it? Nadaria-Watson envelope. If you guys want to use it, it's by Lux Algo. But I prefer to stick to CM Guppy and RSI because those tend to be more accurate for my strategy. Let's move to the RSI. Video's getting still pretty long, but here we have a very healthy retracement for XCN, pulling back to the 50, the yellow pulling back as well, as we don't want to see this just continuing pushing up on the overbought, especially since we have not broken out of that red downward trend line. If you guys have been following along, you know what these purple triangles are in here for. If you haven't, it's the support area. There's a bunch of liquidity waiting to come in right here. The CM Guppy is right here, and we see that it is testing as support. It tried pushing into the other side of that CM Guppy, but is getting a little bit of support here. Nothing too major. And then these black downward trend lines right here, there, and there. That is essentially what I am considering a bull flag. And typically, the best way to measure a bull flag is you could take this, get the price range, start from when it broke out of that downward trend line. More or less, you could do it a little bit lower before it did its reversal. And then we're going to take this, take this, I said take this, This is a little bit more difficult with all this stuff on here. And put it at the top of this downward red trend line. Say we break out at this point. That's essentially what we'd be expecting the push to move up to, which is more or less where this red box has been previously placed, stating that we may get, once it breaks out of this red trend line, hopefully tested as support, we could see a 75 or higher % push up to the 0.02. The 0.02 is our real next resistance. We could even be pushing up towards the 618, this orange box here, which is around 0.027. But beyond that, really, I think it's 0.35 more or less is where we had some previous resistance. We could potentially be pushing up to 0.05 cents more or less from less than a penny currently. So if you haven't entered into XCN, definitely go ahead, check it out, look at entering into it. The reason this is happening is because Bitcoin had its little bit of pullback. But when we look at Bitcoin's chart in comparison, we want it to hold higher lows. There's a lot of stuff on this chart, but it is wicking off, showing that we are getting some bullish support. This pullback is essentially to liquidate a bunch of bulls who leverage their money. Say they have $100, they want to say they have 1,000. They do 10x leverage, and it'd liquidate them just pulling back this amount. Even a little bit further, liquidated a lot more. So a lot of people are longing this, wanting this to continue up, and it's just grabbing some liquidity, building a bigger pile of rocket fuel before we actually take off. But we are still building higher lows. And if this closes and holds, we could build a new trend line for Bitcoin from the previous low and start working its way up. like a ramp. We want it to slowly ramp up, test the 200 EMA, even if it pulls back, try and hold that as support, push up towards the 108, and then more than likely pull back towards the 200 EMA before actually taking off. So let's move on in to XDC, as there's not a whole bunch of information to go off of besides it is trending downwards. The fact that it's an RWA doesn't mean just buy it because some guy online said to buy it because it's an RWA. What you really want to be looking for is waiting for it to break trend lines. Doesn't matter what the news is saying, doesn't matter what is going to be happening next or what the next guru person says. It's following the trend lines, sticking to a strategy. You guys can make your own strategy, but we see that it is breaking underneath this black upward trend line, which means we could have some consolidation and continuation underneath there while Bitcoin is building up and trying to continue its reversal. And so I would just be sitting on the sidelines for XDC, waiting it out. But if you are trapped, essentially we're waiting for this downward red trend line to be broken. And at that same time, we will be crossing over the 200 EMA. And lastly, let's pull it up before this video is 20 minutes long. XRP. XRP dollar cost average it, as I constantly remind you. It's got a major wick off, as we are seeing right here. My iPad is lagging out because the video is getting a little too long, but it was working within this downward channel, got some resistance on the downward channel trend line. Let's see if we can refresh this and get you guys the info you need. Just so you know, 50% is going to save animals' lives, 50% is going to get me new technology, so we don't have this laggy delay. Because after I complete this video, I'm going to have to upload it, delete it, make a thumbnail, and spend a ridiculous amount of time just to get this set up. But XRP, for some reason, it keeps pulling up XCN. XRP dollar cost average, stack a bigger bag. It's, I believe, right around $2 right now. And so it's not going to be pulling up. There it is, $1.97. Major wick off, potential inverse head and shoulders. Essentially, it just needs to break this black downward trend line as well, right around $2.33. And once we are over that $2.33, we would ideally want to see some consolidation happen in there before taking off, because the consolidation would validate that it has broken out of the channel, this black downward trend line, and if it consolidates, it shows that it is building support. There's a bunch of liquidity building up, and it is ready to push up to its all-time high and beyond. So less than $2 now. We're going to come back to this video a couple months, if not by the end of the year, and we're going to be like, wow, we could have got XRP for $1.97. That's not going to be possible more than likely by the end of the year. So stack your bags. You will be able to stake XRP, something that is going to be used around the globe, and that will increase in value over time because the supply gets burned, which means there's going to be less supply, more demand, and the price has to respect that. RSI looks healthy. We're getting a major wick off showing we are getting some bullish support, and we want to see this start curving back up towards the black downward trend line, crossing the 200 EMA at the same time, working within this fair value gap before taking off easily up to the $3.70 mark, more or less. So stack your bags, good luck, have fun with it, become members if you guys want, and I will see you guys on the next one.